2 minutes ago, the internet practically caught fire when word broke that Rasheeda finally had enough, and this time, she wasn't coming quietly. What started as whispers from a luxury resort in Puerto Rico has now erupted into full-blown chaos, with fans stunned and alliances crumbling in real time. According to insiders, an explosive confrontation involving young Joc and Kirk Frost turned into a volatile showdown that dragged everyone into the storm, including Kendra Robinson, and Rasheeda was not about to let it slide. Eyewitnesses claim voices echoed through the hotel halls, tempers flared under the Puerto Rican sun, and long-simmering tensions finally boiled over. What was said behind closed doors? Why did security allegedly have to step in? And most importantly, what pushed Rasheeda to confront Kendra head-on after the dust settled? Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided as old wounds reopened and new accusations flew. Sources close to the group say this wasn't just about one argument, it was about loyalty, respect, and secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. The aftermath? Tears, finger-pointing, and a confrontation so intense it's already being called one of the messiest moments this circle has ever seen. And just when everyone thought the drama couldn't escalate further, Rasheeda reportedly made a move that no one saw coming. So buckle up, because if you think you know how this story ends, think again. This Puerto Rico trip didn't just change friendships, it may have changed everything. The moment the private jet touched down in Puerto Rico, nobody could have predicted how fast paradise would turn into pure chaos. What was supposed to be a celebratory getaway quickly felt tense, like something heavy was hanging in the air. Smiles looked forced, laughter felt loud but empty, and every glance carried a little too much history. Rasheeda noticed it immediately. She had been around long enough to know when energy shifted, and this trip felt off from the start. Kirk was quieter than usual, checking his phone more than he was checking in with her, and young Joc seemed unusually animated, pacing around the villa like he was preparing for a storm he knew was coming. By the first night, drinks were flowing and so were the side comments. It started subtle. A joke here, a sharp laugh there. Then came the whispers. Rasheeda overheard her name more than once, followed by sudden silence when she walked into the room. Fans would later say emotions ran high, but in that moment, Rasheeda was still trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. She told herself it was jet lag, stress, old friendships rubbing the wrong way. But deep down, she felt it. Something was about to explode. Things truly ignited the next afternoon. The group had gathered near the pool, the sun beating down, the ocean breeze doing nothing to cool tempers. Young Joc and Kirk were already on edge, arguing about something that made no sense to anyone else. Voices rose, hands waved, and suddenly the argument shifted. It wasn't business anymore, it was personal. Accusations flew, old grudges resurfaced, and before anyone could intervene, young Joc shouted something that made the entire group freeze. Whatever he said, it hit Kirk hard. Kirk stepped forward, chest puffed, face red, yelling back without hesitation. Security moved closer. Cameras caught everything. Fans would later be shocked at how fast it escalated. Rasheeda stood frozen, watching the two men go at it, her heart racing. She wasn't just angry, she was hurt, embarrassed, confused. This was supposed to be a fresh start, and now here they were, unraveling in front of everyone. She tried to step in, but Kirk waved her off, telling her to stay out of it. That moment cut deeper than any insult. Rasheeda fell silent, but her eyes said everything. Later that night, after the argument was broken up and the group scattered, whispers turned into full conversations. People picked sides. Some blamed young Joc for provoking Kirk. Others claimed Kirk had been hiding something and the truth finally slipped out. Kendra's name started circulating in hushed tones, always followed by nervous glances. Rasheeda noticed how often people looked at her when Kendra was mentioned, like they were waiting for a reaction. She didn't confront anyone yet, but the seed had been planted. By morning, the villa felt divided. Breakfast was awkward, chairs pulled farther apart than usual. Kirk barely spoke to Rasheeda, and when he did, it was defensive, clipped. She asked him directly what the fight was about, but his answers didn't add up. He said it was old stuff, nothing serious, something between him and Joc. Rasheeda had heard that before. Fans watching later would say this was the moment everything cracked. She nodded, but she didn't believe him. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Rasheeda stepped away to take it, her expression shifting from calm to stunned in seconds. Whoever was on the other end didn't sugarcoat a thing. Names were named, details were shared, and Kendra was at the center of it all. Rasheeda felt her chest tighten as pieces began to fall into place. The tension, the whispers, Kirk's silence. Suddenly, Puerto Rico felt very small. When Rasheeda returned to the group, her energy had changed completely. She was no longer observing. She was calculating. She watched Kendra closely, noticing the way she avoided eye contact, the way she spoke too loudly, laughed too hard. Rasheeda didn't say a word, but everyone felt it. The family was left divided, and nobody knew which side Rasheeda was on yet. That night, another gathering was planned, supposedly to clear the air. Drinks were poured, music played, and people pretended things were normal. But underneath it all, tension crackled like electricity. Young Joc arrived late, still visibly irritated. Kirk avoided him entirely. Kendra walked in confident, head held high, greeting everyone like nothing had happened. Rasheeda watched from across the room, her face unreadable. The conversation eventually circled back to the fight. Young Joc spoke first, his tone sharp, claiming he was tired of protecting people who didn't deserve it. Kirk snapped back, accusing Joc of stirring drama for attention. Voices rose again, and this time, Rasheeda couldn't stay quiet. She stood up slowly, commanding the room without raising her voice. She asked one simple question, and it landed like a bomb. Why was Kendra's name in the middle of every version of this story? The room went silent. Fans would later say you could feel the shift through the screen. Kendra laughed nervously, brushing it off, saying she had nothing to do with their issues. Kirk jumped in too quickly, defending her before anyone even accused her. That was all Rasheeda needed. Her eyes locked on Kendra, and in that moment, the confrontation everyone feared felt inevitable. The silence after Rasheeda's question felt louder than any argument that had come before it. Kendra's smile tightened, just for a second, before she leaned back and crossed her arms, acting unbothered. She said Rasheeda was reaching, that people loved dragging her name into mess that didn't belong to her. But her voice wavered, and everyone noticed. Young Joc scoffed from the corner, shaking his head, muttering that the truth always gets uncomfortable before it comes out. Kirk snapped at him to keep quiet, but that only made things worse. Rasheeda took a slow breath, trying to steady herself. This wasn't just about rumors anymore. This was about respect. She said she didn't care about sides, didn't care about old friendships, but she did care about being lied to. She turned to Kirk and asked him again, calmly this time, if there was anything he wanted to say before she heard it from someone else. Kirk looked trapped. His eyes darted around the room, landing on Kendra, then back to Rasheeda. He said nothing. That silence spoke volumes. Fans would later say this was the moment emotions ran high for real. Rasheeda's voice cracked as she said she had defended Kirk through years of embarrassment, public scrutiny, and broken trust. She had stood 10 toes down when everyone else told her to walk away, and now she was standing in Puerto Rico, feeling like the last person to know what was really going on. Kendra interrupted, telling Rasheeda not to project her marriage issues onto her. That was a mistake. Young Joc jumped in, saying Kendra needed to stop playing innocent because she knew exactly what she was doing. He claimed she had been pulling strings behind the scenes, stirring conversations, planting ideas, and then stepping back to watch everything blow up. Kendra shot back, accusing Joc of lying to save his own image. The argument spiraled, voices overlapping, people standing up, others backing away. The family was left divided, and nobody knew how to calm it down. Rasheeda raised her hand, demanding quiet. When the room finally settled, she looked directly at Kendra and asked her one last time, woman to woman, to tell the truth. Kendra hesitated, then said she had only been repeating things Kirk himself had told her. That statement hit like a punch. All eyes turned to Kirk. He exploded, yelling that his words were being twisted, that he trusted Kendra as a friend and nothing more. Rasheeda's face fell. Friend. That word echoed in her head. The night ended without resolution. People retreated to their rooms, but nobody slept. Phones buzzed non-stop. Fans online were already speculating, clips leaking, theories flying. By morning, Puerto Rico was trending for all the wrong reasons. Rasheeda sat alone on the balcony, replaying every conversation, every red flag she had ignored. She felt foolish, angry, and strangely calm all at once. She knew what she had to do next. Later that day, she requested a private meeting with Kendra. No cameras, no Kirk, no young Joc. Just them. Kendra arrived confident but cautious, sensing this wasn't a casual chat. Rasheeda didn't waste time. She laid everything out, the phone call, the whispers, the inconsistencies. She told Kendra she wasn't here to fight, she was here to understand why another woman felt comfortable being in the middle of her marriage drama. Kendra fired back that Rasheeda should be questioning her husband, not her. That struck a nerve. Rasheeda admitted Kirk had his faults, but she also said boundaries mattered. She accused Kendra of crossing lines, of enjoying the chaos while pretending to be above it. Kendra denied it, but her eyes betrayed her. She finally admitted she liked having influence, liked being the person people confided in. She claimed she never intended for it to blow up this way. Rasheeda laughed bitterly, saying intentions didn't erase damage. Meanwhile, Kirk and young Joc had their own confrontation outside. This time, it wasn't explosive, it was raw. Joc accused Kirk of always hiding behind his marriage while moving reckless. Kirk accused Joc of jealousy and clout chasing. Eventually, Joc said something that changed the tone. He said he warned Kirk that things would come out if he didn't get honest. Kirk went quiet. That silence again. It followed him everywhere. By evening, word spread that Rasheeda was done talking. She gathered everyone one last time, her posture strong but her eyes tired. She said she wasn't making any decisions yet, but she was done being kept in the dark. She told Kirk he needed to decide whether he was her partner or her problem. She told Kendra she didn't trust her, and trust once broken was hard to rebuild. Fans watching would say this speech felt final, like a turning point. The group dispersed, friendships fractured. Some sided with Rasheeda, praising her strength. Others claimed she was being too harsh, that the blame wasn't all on one person. But one thing was clear. This trip had changed everything. The laughter from the first day felt like a lifetime ago. Puerto Rico had exposed truths no one was ready for. That night, Rasheeda packed her bags. Kirk watched silently, knowing better than to stop her. She told him she needed space, clarity, and honesty. Whether that meant together or apart, she didn't know yet. She walked out without looking back, leaving Kirk alone with his thoughts. The aftermath was messy, unresolved, and public. As the sun rose over the island, fans were shocked by how quickly things unraveled. Emotions ran high, secrets were exposed, and the family was left divided. And with so many questions unanswered, one thing was certain. This drama was far from over, and whatever came next would be even more explosive. Rasheeda's departure sent shockwaves through everyone left behind in that villa. The door hadn't even fully closed before whispers started again. Some people said she was bluffing, that she always left to cool off and came back stronger. Others weren't so sure this time. Kirk stood frozen in the living room, staring at the spot where she had been standing just moments before, his jaw tight, his pride wounded, and his fear finally catching up to him. For the first time on the trip, he looked like a man who realized he might actually lose everything. Kendra, on the other hand, retreated to her room, slamming the door behind her. Inside, she paced back and forth, replaying the conversation with Rasheeda in her head. She told herself she had done nothing wrong, that she was being used as a scapegoat, but deep down she knew she had enjoyed being important. Enjoyed being the one with information. Enjoyed being needed. Fans would later say this was the moment her image truly cracked. Young Joc didn't celebrate either. He sat outside, scrolling through his phone as clips from the argument flooded social media. Comments were ruthless. Some praised him for speaking up, others accused him of throwing gasoline on a fire that didn't belong to him. He shook his head, muttering that nobody ever wanted the truth until it showed up uninvited. Still, even he looked uneasy. He hadn't expected Rasheeda to walk away like that. Hours passed, and Kirk finally went after her. He found Rasheeda at a quiet beachfront hotel she had booked last minute. When he knocked on the door, she didn't answer right away. When she did, her face was calm, but distant. Kirk started talking before she could say a word, apologizing, explaining, promising. He said Kendra was just a confidant, that nothing inappropriate happened, that things had been taken out of context. Rasheeda listened without interrupting, and that scared him more than if she had yelled. When he finished, she asked him one question. Why did I have to find out from everyone else instead of you? Kirk had no answer. He tried to hug her, but she stepped back. She told him love wasn't enough without transparency. She said she felt foolish defending him publicly while he let other people narrate their story. Kirk swore he would cut ties with Kendra, that he would do whatever it took. Rasheeda said she didn't want promises. She wanted proof. Back at the villa, Kendra finally re-emerged, defensive and visibly shaken. She confronted young Joc, accusing him of turning Rasheeda against her. Joc fired back, saying he didn't have that kind of power. He said if Rasheeda turned on her, it was because of Kendra's own actions. Voices rose again, and once more the group split down the middle. Fans watching were shocked at how quickly alliances shifted. The next day, production pushed for one final sit-down. Everyone agreed, reluctantly. Rasheeda returned, composed but guarded. Kirk sat beside her, not touching her hand. Kendra sat across from them, chin lifted, eyes sharp. The air was thick with unfinished business. Rasheeda spoke first, saying she wasn't there to attack anyone, but she was done accepting half-truths. She asked Kendra directly if she ever felt inappropriate getting involved in her marriage. Kendra hesitated, then said maybe she should have set better boundaries, but she never meant harm. That half-admission changed the room. Kirk looked at Kendra in disbelief. Rasheeda closed her eyes briefly, as if confirming what she already knew. She said intent didn't cancel impact, and impact was what she was living with. She told Kendra she forgave her for her own peace, but forgiveness didn't mean access. That statement stunned everyone. Kendra's composure finally broke. She said Rasheeda was acting superior, that she stayed with Kirk through worse and now wanted to play victim. Rasheeda snapped back, reminding her that staying didn't mean accepting disrespect from outsiders. Emotions ran high again, and this time there was no pretending otherwise. The family was left divided right there on that couch. Kirk tried to step in, saying he took responsibility for his role. He admitted he should have been more transparent, that he leaned on Kendra emotionally when he shouldn't have. That confession hit harder than anything before it. Rasheeda stared at him, tears welling but not falling. Fans later said this was the most painful moment of all. After the meeting, the group disbanded for good. Some left Puerto Rico early. Friendships dissolved quietly, without closure. Kendra left alone, her phone buzzing with messages she didn't want to read. Young Joc departed with a heavy conscience, knowing he had told the truth but still hurt people he cared about. Kirk and Rasheeda flew home together, but worlds apart. Back home, the fallout continued. Interviews, social media posts, fan reactions poured in. Some applauded Rasheeda's strength, calling her a queen for standing her ground. Others questioned whether this was finally the end of her marriage. Kirk stayed mostly silent, posting vague messages about growth and accountability. Kendra defended herself publicly, saying she was misunderstood, but the damage was done. Privately, Rasheeda began rebuilding herself. She leaned on family, focused on her business, and pulled back from everyone who had access to her life. She told close friends she wasn't making any decisions out of anger. She wanted clarity, healing, and respect, whether that meant staying or walking away. Fans were left speculating, dissecting every move, every post, every absence. And even as the headlines faded, the questions remained. Could Kirk truly change? Was Kendra really sorry, or just sorry she was exposed? And would Rasheeda choose love or peace if forced to pick one? One thing was undeniable. Puerto Rico wasn't just a trip. It was a reckoning. Emotions ran high, truths came out, and the family was left divided in ways that might never fully heal. Weeks after the Puerto Rico fallout, the tension didn't fade, it transformed. It went from loud confrontations to quiet distance, from explosive arguments to carefully worded silences. Rasheeda and Kirk moved through the same house like strangers, polite but disconnected. Every conversation felt rehearsed, every moment weighed down by what had been said and what still hadn't. Fans were shocked by how cold things appeared, especially after years of watching Rasheeda fight to keep her family intact. Kirk tried to overcorrect. Flowers showed up unannounced. Long messages filled with accountability and regret were sent late at night. He started therapy, made sure people knew it, almost like proof he was changing. But Rasheeda wasn't impressed by gestures anymore. She told him change wasn't loud, it was consistent. She said trust didn't rebuild on apologies, it rebuilt on time. Kirk nodded, but impatience crept in. He wanted forgiveness on a schedule. Rasheeda refused to give him one. Kendra, meanwhile, felt the walls closing in. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. People who once defended her went quiet. She posted motivational quotes about growth and being misunderstood, but the comments told a different story. Fans accused her of playing victim, of inserting herself where she didn't belong. Emotions ran high online, and the family was left divided even among viewers. Some still felt Kirk was the real issue, others insisted Kendra crossed unforgivable lines. Behind the scenes, Kendra reached out to Rasheeda one last time. The message was long, emotional, filled with apologies and explanations. She said she never intended to disrespect her marriage, that she got caught in the middle and didn't know how to step out. Rasheeda read it more than once. She didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her reply was short. She thanked Kendra for the apology but made it clear she needed distance. Peace required boundaries, and she was choosing herself. That response hit Kendra harder than any argument. It confirmed what she had been avoiding. Access was gone, influence was gone, and for the first time, she had to sit with the consequences without a spotlight to soften the blow. Fans watching from the outside called it karma. Others said it was just sad. Either way, the chapter was closing. Young Joc tried to stay out of it, but the drama followed him anyway. Interviews brought the questions back. Was he wrong for speaking up? Did he regret how things went down? He admitted he wished it hadn't exploded the way it did, but he didn't regret telling the truth. He said secrets rot relationships, and sometimes exposure was the only way to clean things out. Fans were divided on him too, some praising his honesty, others calling him reckless. One night, Rasheeda finally broke down. Not on camera, not online, but alone with someone she trusted. She admitted she was tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being understanding. Tired of carrying blame for other people's choices. She said she loved Kirk, but love felt heavy now. Like responsibility instead of partnership. That realization scared her more than the thought of being alone. Kirk sensed the shift. It wasn't anger anymore. It was detachment. He tried to reignite what they had, planning trips, suggesting counseling retreats, even bringing up renewing vows. Rasheeda listened, but her heart wasn't in it. She asked him something that stopped him cold. Who are you without me fixing things for you? He didn't answer. He couldn't. As weeks turned into months, decisions had to be made. Rasheeda chose separation, not out of revenge, but clarity. She needed to breathe without questioning every move, every conversation, every silence. Kirk took it hard. He felt exposed, humbled, and scared. He told friends he didn't realize how much he leaned on Rasheeda's forgiveness to survive. Now he had to face himself without her buffering the consequences. The announcement wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no tears on camera. Just a statement about growth, reflection, and prioritizing peace. Fans were stunned. Some celebrated her strength, others mourned the relationship they had watched for years. Emotions ran high across the internet, and the family was left divided in opinion, but Rasheeda didn't engage. She had said enough. Kendra reacted quietly, posting a single message about lessons learned the hard way. It didn't get much attention. The spotlight had moved on. Young Joc focused on his own life, claiming he was done carrying other people's secrets. Kirk disappeared from public view for a while, working on himself away from the noise. And Rasheeda? She flourished in her silence. Business thrived, confidence returned. She smiled more, laughed easier. She wasn't healed completely, but she was healing honestly. Puerto Rico had been painful, humiliating, explosive. But it had also been necessary. It forced truth into the open, stripped illusions away, and gave her the clarity she had avoided for too long. Fans still debate what really happened, who was most at fault, and whether things could have ended differently. But one thing remains undeniable. That fight didn't just expose drama. It exposed patterns. Emotions ran high, lines were crossed, and the family was left divided. And in the end, Rasheeda chose the one thing she had always given everyone else. Herself. Time passed, but the shadow of Puerto Rico never fully left. Even as Rasheeda settled into her new routine, there were moments when memories crept in uninvited. A song on the radio. A late-night silence that felt too familiar. She told herself healing wasn't linear, and some days would sting more than others. Still, she refused to go backward. She had chosen peace, and she was determined not to confuse peace with loneliness. Kirk, meanwhile, was forced to sit with everything he had avoided for years. Without Rasheeda stepping in to smooth things over, he felt exposed. Friends who once laughed off his mistakes now questioned him. Business partners kept things strictly professional. The cushion he had grown used to was gone. He started journaling, something he once mocked. Page after page filled with regrets, justifications, and finally, accountability. He admitted to himself that he loved the attention, loved feeling wanted by everyone, and never considered how deeply it cut the person who had stood by him the longest. Rumors started swirling again when fans noticed Kirk attending events alone. Some speculated he was already moving on. Others believed he was finally doing the work. Rasheeda ignored the noise. She had learned the hard way that public opinion shifted faster than truth. What mattered now was how she felt when she looked in the mirror. For the first time in years, she recognized herself. Then came the unexpected invitation. A mutual friend reached out, suggesting a neutral dinner. No cameras, no agendas, just closure. Rasheeda hesitated. Part of her felt strong enough to face it. Another part feared reopening wounds she had just started to close. After days of thought, she agreed, not for Kirk but for herself. The dinner was awkward at first. Small talk filled the gaps where intimacy once lived. Kirk looked different, quieter, humbler. Rasheeda noticed but didn't comment. Eventually, the conversation turned real. Kirk apologized again, but this time without theatrics. No promises, no grand plans, just acknowledgement. He said he finally understood that love without respect was manipulation, even if unintentional. Rasheeda listened. She didn't rush to forgive. She told him she appreciated the honesty, but trust wasn't something she could rebuild on words alone. She said she didn't know what the future looked like, and she was finally okay with that uncertainty. Kirk nodded. For once, he didn't push. That alone spoke volumes. News of the dinner leaked anyway. Fans dissected every detail, every imagined expression. Emotions ran high online, with people debating whether Rasheeda should give him another chance or never look back. The family was left divided in opinion once again, but Rasheeda stayed silent. She had learned that her healing didn't need an audience. Kendra watched all of this from a distance. She had tried to move on, but the stain of Puerto Rico followed her. Opportunities dried up. People were polite but distant. She reflected often on how quickly influence could turn into isolation. In quiet moments, she admitted to herself that she had enjoyed being in the middle far too much. Power, even small doses of it, was intoxicating. And she had paid the price. One evening, Kendra typed out another message to Rasheeda. This one was different. No explanations, no defenses, just accountability. She admitted she crossed lines and understood why forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. She wished Rasheeda peace, nothing more. Rasheeda read it, felt the weight lift slightly, and didn't reply. Sometimes closure didn't require response. As months passed, Rasheeda began to date herself. Solo trips, Quiet mornings, laughter without tension. She realized how much of her energy had gone into managing chaos that wasn't hers to fix. That realization brought both relief and grief. She mourned the version of herself that thought endurance equaled love. Kirk continued his work quietly. Therapy became routine, not content. He stopped oversharing and started listening more. People noticed the change, slowly. Not everyone believed it, but he wasn't chasing belief anymore. He was chasing growth. Another chance meeting happened unexpectedly at a charity event. Rasheeda and Kirk crossed paths without planning to. There was no tension this time, just familiarity softened by distance. They talked briefly, respectfully. When they parted, Rasheeda felt something surprising. Gratitude, not for the pain, but for the lesson. Fans were shocked when Rasheeda later said in an interview that she didn't regret Puerto Rico. She said it forced truths into the open that she had been avoiding. Emotions ran high then, but clarity came after. She said sometimes things had to fall apart loudly so you could rebuild quietly, whether together or alone. The future remained unwritten. Maybe reconciliation, maybe permanent separation. What mattered was that Rasheeda was no longer afraid of either outcome. She had reclaimed her voice, her boundaries, and her sense of self. The family had been left divided, friendships tested, and reputations shaken. But from the wreckage, something honest emerged. And as fans continued to debate, speculate, and choose sides, Rasheeda moves forward unbothered by the noise. Because the real story was never about the fight, the trip, or the rumors. It was about a woman choosing herself after years of choosing everyone else. Even as the public conversation slowly shifted to newer scandals and louder headlines, the ripple effects of Puerto Rico continued quietly behind closed doors. Rasheeda felt it most in the still moments, the ones without cameras or noise. She noticed how her body no longer tensed when her phone buzzed late at night. She slept better. She laughed without checking the room. Healing was subtle, but it was real, and that scared her almost as much as the chaos once did. People around her began to notice the difference. Friends said she carried herself lighter, like she wasn't bracing for impact anymore. Business meetings felt sharper, more focused. She trusted her instincts again. For years, she had silenced that inner voice in the name of loyalty. Now, she honored it. Fans were shocked when she hinted in a live conversation that sometimes love teaches you how much you've been neglecting yourself. Kirk, on the other hand, struggled with the quiet. He had spent so long in noise, in conflict, in reaction, that stillness felt unbearable. Therapy sessions dug deeper than he expected. Patterns emerged that he couldn't ignore anymore. He talked about validation, about ego, about how being wanted by many had always felt safer than being truly known by one. Admitting that out loud stripped him of his excuses. He tried not to reach out to Rasheeda too often, respecting the boundaries she had set, but every now and then, he slipped. A message here, a check-in there. Rasheeda responded kindly but firmly, never reopening doors she wasn't ready to walk through. That balance frustrated Kirk, but it also taught him something. Love didn't mean access. Meanwhile, the group that once traveled together barely spoke. Puerto Rico had fractured more than one relationship. Some friendships ended with silence, others with bitterness. People who once defended each other publicly now avoided mentioning names at all. The family was left divided in ways that felt permanent. Fans watching from the outside said it was like watching a domino effect, one truth knocking down years of carefully built appearances. Kendra attempted to rebuild her image slowly. She took accountability in private spaces, not online. She stepped away from situations where she could be misinterpreted. Still, trust was slow to return. She learned that apologies didn't erase impact and that some doors closed quietly, without ceremony. Emotions ran high for her in isolation, but she accepted it as consequence rather than punishment. Young Joc stayed vocal but more cautious. He spoke openly about how speaking the truth came with a price. He admitted that even when you're right, timing and delivery matter. Still, he stood by his decision, saying secrets only grow teeth when ignored. Fans were split, some praising his honesty, others blaming him for the fallout. He shrugged it off, saying peace didn't come from pleasing everyone. Months later, another rumor surfaced, threatening to reopen everything. Whispers of Kirk being seen with someone new spread quickly. Blogs jumped on it. Fans flooded Rasheeda's comments, demanding reactions. Emotions ran high online, but Rasheeda didn't engage. Privately, she felt a flicker of something, not jealousy, but clarity. She realized that whatever Kirk chose to do no longer dictated her emotional state. That realization felt powerful. When asked about it directly, she responded calmly, saying she wished him well and hoped he continued growing. Fans were shocked by her composure. Some called it maturity, others called it indifference. The truth sat somewhere in between. She had grieved already, loudly, privately, and thoroughly. Another unexpected moment came when Rasheeda ran into Kendra at a mutual event. The encounter was brief but respectful. No tension, no apologies, just acknowledgement. Both women walked away changed, not healed together, but healed enough apart. Sometimes closure came without conversation. As time moved forward, Rasheeda began envisioning a future that didn't revolve around fixing, defending, or explaining. She talked about redefining partnership, about choosing peace over performance. Fans resonated deeply with that message. Many said her story helped them rethink their own relationships. That impact meant more to her than any headline ever could. Kirk watched from a distance, recognizing that the woman he once leaned on had outgrown the version of him he used to be. That realization hurt, but it also motivated him. Growth, he learned, wasn't about getting someone back. It was about becoming someone better, regardless of who stayed. The Puerto Rico fight became legend in fan circles, replayed, analyzed, debated endlessly. But for those who lived it, it was more than drama. It was a breaking point. Emotions ran high, truth surfaced, and the family was left divided. Yet from that fracture came clarity that silence never could. Rasheeda often said she didn't know what the future held, and for the first time, that uncertainty felt freeing instead of frightening. Whether alone or with someone new, she knew one thing for sure. She would never abandon herself again. And as fans continue to speculate, one truth remains unshaken. That confrontation didn't just expose secrets. It changed lives. It forced accountability. It demanded growth. And in the end, it marked the moment a woman chose herself, unapologetically, after years of choosing everyone else. Even long after Puerto Rico faded from the headlines, the emotional aftershocks kept resurfacing in quiet, unexpected ways. Rasheeda noticed it when she no longer felt the need to explain herself to anyone. No long justifications. No rehearsed answers. She stopped shrinking her truth to make other people comfortable. That alone felt revolutionary. Fans who followed her closely could see it too. Her energy was different, grounded, unbothered, like someone who had finally stepped out of survival mode. She began speaking more openly about boundaries, not in a preachy way, but in a lived-in way. She said peace wasn't passive, it was intentional. Every boundary she set was a decision to protect her future self. Emotions ran high when she shared that sometimes loyalty can turn into self-betrayal if you're not careful. That line alone sent waves through social media, with fans quoting it, debating it, and applying it to their own lives. Kirk watched all of this quietly. He realized too late that Rasheeda's strength had always covered his weaknesses. Without her absorbing the backlash, smoothing over conflicts, and standing in front of the fire, he felt exposed. Accountability hit differently when there was no one left to shield you from it. Friends who once enabled him now challenged him. Some relationships fell away completely. The family was left divided, but Kirk understood now that division was the cost of truth. There were moments he wanted to defend himself publicly, to correct narratives, to explain his side. But therapy had taught him restraint. Not everything needed a response. Not every truth needed to be broadcast. Growth, he learned, was often invisible and uncomfortable. He stopped posting vague quotes and started sitting with silence. That alone was a shift. Kendra's journey was quieter, lonelier. She lost access to spaces she once moved through effortlessly. At first, she blamed everyone else. Then, slowly, she stopped. Accountability arrived not as a dramatic realization, but as exhaustion. She was tired of defending herself. Tired of explaining intentions. She accepted that even unintentional harm was still harm. That acceptance didn't bring redemption, but it brought clarity. She began rebuilding outside the spotlight, choosing smaller circles, fewer conversations, more listening. She admitted privately that being close to power had felt intoxicating. Relevance had felt like validation. Losing it felt like withdrawal. Emotions ran high in that isolation, but she faced them head-on, knowing growth without witnesses was the hardest kind. Young Joc, reflecting on everything, acknowledged that truth-telling came with collateral damage. He said sometimes doing the right thing still left you alone afterward. He lost friendships, gained criticism, but kept his integrity. He learned that being honest didn't guarantee being understood. Fans were still split on him, but he had made peace with that. Peace, he realized, didn't require consensus. Rasheeda's life continued expanding. New opportunities, new routines, new joy. She didn't rush into replacing what she lost. Instead, she asked herself better questions. What do I want? What do I tolerate? What do I deserve? Those questions guided every decision. She said no more often. She rested without guilt. She laughed without checking over her shoulder. People noticed how she no longer flinched when Kirk's name came up. Not because she was numb, but because she was resolved. Closure, she learned, wasn't about answers. It was about acceptance. Fans were shocked when she said in a quiet moment that love should never feel like labor. That line resonated deeply, especially with women who had spent years holding relationships together alone. Kirk eventually reached a place where he could acknowledge that losing Rasheeda as his anchor forced him to become accountable for himself. He stopped framing his growth as a way to win her back. Instead, he focused on becoming someone who wouldn't repeat the same patterns, regardless of who stood beside him. That shift mattered, even if it came late. The Puerto Rico fight became a reference point, a before and after marker. People spoke about it like a cautionary tale. How secrets don't stay buried. How loyalty without boundaries becomes dangerous. How silence can be louder than betrayal. Emotions ran high when fans revisited it, but the people who lived it had moved on in ways the audience couldn't fully see. There were still moments of sadness. Healing didn't erase history. Rasheeda allowed herself to grieve what could have been without romanticizing what actually was. She said grief wasn't weakness, it was honesty. Pretending you weren't hurt only delayed the healing. That transparency made her even more respected. Kendra, hearing those words from afar, felt them deeply. She understood now that being in proximity to someone's marriage meant carrying responsibility, whether invited or not. She accepted that some lessons came at the cost of reputation. Growth, she realized, didn't always come with applause. As time moved forward, the group that once shared space became a memory rather than a presence. No reunions, no reconciliations, just distance. The family was left divided, but division didn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it meant differentiation, people choosing separate paths because growth required it. Rasheeda often reflected on how loud pain had forced her into quiet strength. She said if Puerto Rico hadn't happened, she might still be negotiating her worth in rooms where it was never questioned. That realization alone made the chaos feel purposeful. Fans still speculate, still debate who was wrong and who was worse. But the truth lives beyond commentary. The real transformation happened when accountability replaced denial, when boundaries replaced endurance, when self-respect replaced fear of being alone. And through it all, one message remained clear. Drama exposes what comfort hides. Emotions run high when truth surfaces. Families get divided when patterns break. But on the other side of that fracture, there is clarity. There is growth. There is a version of yourself you don't recognize at first, because she's stronger, quieter, and finally choosing herself without apology. As the months continued to roll forward, the story stopped being about scandal and started being about evolution. Rasheeda no longer introduced herself through her marriage or her past. She showed up as herself, fully, without explanation. The weight she once carried had been replaced with something quieter but stronger. Confidence without noise, power without performance. Fans who had followed her for years said it felt like watching someone finally exhale after holding their breath for too long. She spent more time with her children, more time building, more time listening to what her body and spirit needed. There were mornings she woke up grateful and others where grief still tapped her shoulder unexpectedly. She didn't fight those moments anymore. She let them pass through instead of consuming her. Healing, she realized, wasn't about erasing pain, it was about not letting pain define her decisions. Kirk continued doing the work, but the results came slowly. Accountability didn't bring immediate redemption. Some people never looked at him the same again. He accepted that. He stopped expecting applause for growth that should have happened years ago. Therapy forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about entitlement, about leaning on forgiveness instead of earning trust. He learned that remorse without change was manipulation, even when unintentional. There were days he wanted to reach out to Rasheeda just to share progress, but he stopped himself. He understood now that healing wasn't a group project. Some journeys had to be walked alone. When he did speak her name, it was with respect, not ownership. That shift mattered, even if it came too late to repair what was broken. Kendra stayed mostly out of the public eye. The silence that once scared her became necessary. She learned who she was without proximity to chaos, without relevance tied to other people's stories. The quiet stripped her down. Some days it hurt, other days it freed her. She learned that attention wasn't the same as purpose, and influence without integrity always came with a cost. She accepted that her role in the fallout would always be debated. Some would forgive, others never would. She stopped trying to control the narrative and focused on controlling herself. That alone brought a sense of peace she hadn't felt before. Young Joc moved forward too, but the experience left a mark. He spoke less, listened more. He admitted that even when truth needed to be said, delivery mattered. Still, he didn't regret exposing what had been festering beneath the surface. He said sometimes being the villain in someone else's story was the price of honesty. Fans remained divided, but he stood firm in his stance. Over time, the Puerto Rico incident became less about the fight and more about the aftermath. People stopped asking what happened and started asking why it happened. Patterns were discussed, boundaries were questioned, loyalty was redefined, emotions ran high not just among the people involved, but among viewers who saw pieces of themselves reflected in the chaos. Rasheeda began receiving messages from women thanking her for choosing herself. They said watching her walk away from constant justification gave them courage to do the same. Those messages meant more to her than ratings or attention ever could. She realized her story had become bigger than gossip. It had become a mirror. There were moments when she and Kirk crossed paths again, briefly, respectfully. No tension, no nostalgia disguised as hope. Just two people acknowledging shared history without trying to relive it. That was growth on both sides. The family had been left divided, but division didn't always mean resentment. Sometimes it meant release. The idea of reconciliation lingered in the background, but it no longer controlled the narrative. Rasheeda didn't feel pressure to define the future. She had learned that uncertainty wasn't a threat. It was freedom. Whether she chose love again or chose solitude, it would be from clarity, not fear. Fans continued to speculate, to dissect, to argue timelines and intentions. But the people living it had moved beyond the need to be understood by everyone. Understanding themselves was enough. The Puerto Rico fight would always be remembered as explosive, dramatic, unforgettable. Emotions ran high, secrets surfaced, alliances collapsed. The family was left divided. But it also marked the moment when avoidance ended and accountability began. Rasheeda often reflected on how strength didn't always look like staying. Sometimes it looked like walking away with dignity. Sometimes it looked like silence instead of explanation. Sometimes it looked like choosing peace even when chaos felt familiar. And as time passed, one truth became impossible to ignore. That confrontation didn't destroy lives. It exposed them. It forced honesty where comfort once lived. It demanded growth where denial had thrived. In the end, the loudest transformation happened quietly. Without announcements. Without validation. Just a woman standing firmly in her worth, no longer negotiating her boundaries, no longer carrying other people's baggage as her own. And that, more than any argument or accusation, was the real ending to the drama. If you've made it this far, then you already know this story isn't just about a fight, a trip, or a rumor. It's about choices, consequences, and what happens when truth finally refuses to stay hidden. Emotions ran high, loyalties were tested, and the family was left divided in ways no one expected. But now the biggest question is yours to answer. Do you think Rasheeda did the right thing by choosing herself, or should she have given Kirk one more chance to prove he'd changed? Was Kendra misunderstood, or did she cross lines that can't be uncrossed? And was young Joc brave for speaking up, or reckless for igniting a fire that burned everyone involved? Fans are shocked, opinions are split, and the debate is far from over. This is where you come in. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell us exactly where you stand. Don't hold back, because every perspective adds another layer to this drama. If this story had you hooked, confused, or emotionally invested, make sure you hit like so more people can join the conversation. If you want to stay locked in for more explosive stories, shocking confrontations, and behind-the-scenes drama that keeps everyone talking, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. And if this story reminded you of someone you know, or a situation you've lived through, share it with them and see what they think. Sometimes these stories spark conversations we didn't even know we needed. This drama may be over for now, but the questions, the opinions, and the fallout are still unfolding. So tell us, whose side are you really on?